Today, we're sitting down with Jen Seyfret, the one and only from Escrow Advantage. Jen, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
You're welcome.
My first podcast.
Is it really?
It is.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun.
I love talking in front of people, so very comfortable.
I love that. Well, today we're going to try and figure out exactly what it is an escrow office does. So, for the people that don't know you, can you give us a little background about who you are and your position at the company?
Yes, my name's Jen Seyfret. I am an escrow officer and the branch manager of Escrow Advantage on the Old Road. I've been with Escrow Advantage for 10 years, been managing their office for 5 years this year. I've been in escrow for over 20 years, started off as a receptionist and worked my way up.
This is it. You live it, you breathe it.
I live it, I breathe it, I love it,
Yeah.
and I hate it sometimes, but I mostly love it.
Yeah, it's just enough stress and chaos, and you're able to put out fires and have that sense of accomplishment. Like, no one could have solved this other than me because all the experience that you have, though, plays a big role, right?
Yes, the experience plays a big role. I think I also suffer from anxiety, but for some reason I'm really able to channel my anxiety into my work, so I'm able to foresee problems that are going to come up and hopefully fix them before they become too big. So I think that's one of my strengths as an escrow officer.
Yeah, that's huge, right? Like, because when people buy and sell houses, they never really want to take a shot with someone who's brand new. And having years of experience, I mean, there's like a commercial, I don't know what it is, but it's like, oh, we've seen it before, we've done it before kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the amount of transactions that you've done, just the sheer volume is just pertinent in your success at your company.
Correct.
Right?
There's not a lot that comes across my desk these days that I haven't seen before. I'm not saying it never does, but I do have a group of escrow officers that I trust that are mentors to me that I'm able to reach out to if I don't understand something or I need help. So
cool.
I've got a lot of help.
Yeah, and you're in charge of 5 employees at your office right now?
Yes, I have 5 girls that work for me.
Okay.
Women.
5 women that work for you.
That work for me.
And they're all amazing and super nice.
Fantastic.
They are customer service oriented,
Yes.
which is what I absolutely love because that's kind of how I run my business is we're here to take care of you and follow through on the promises that we've made to you.
Right. Well, we are an extension of the agents that choose us to handle their clients' escrows. So we need to be on our A game because you need to be on your A game. And if you're referring people who aren't doing their job properly, it reflects badly on you.
Right. There's nothing worse in life than saying, hey, I trust this person, and then them not being able to follow through.
Exactly.
Right? So that's kind of why we love you guys so much, I think, is because we are so confident in your ability and your competence. And whenever our clients have questions, you guys always seem to answer them so quickly. And you de-stress the client that we have.
We try. Just buying and selling is very stressful. There's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of times people don't do it very often. So they need to be able to trust the people that they're working with to help them through it.
So in any given real estate transaction, you have like 4 professionals and 10 people, let's call it, right? So you have the agent, then you have the escrow officer, you have the lender if people are choosing to borrow money to purchase a home, which most people do, and then you have the title officer. Right? Amongst other miscellaneous things like insurance and maybe the inspector and things like that, kind of pertaining to the home itself. But as far as the paperwork is concerned, there's 4 different professionals and like 10 different people that all need to sign and review all these documents.
Not necessarily. So really in escrow, the buyers and the sellers are our only clients.
Okay.
We work for them. We do not work for the agents. We don't work for the title company. We do not work for the lenders, for insurance. We work for the buyers and the sellers, and we're a neutral third party. Our job is to make sure the terms of the contract are followed before the file closes, and we transfer ownership to the new buyer and transfer proceeds to the seller once the file closes.
Okay.
So that's our main job.
Okay.
Obviously, we do a lot more than that, but that's the
when you
nut
say
and bolts of escrow.
When you say you're the neutral third party, like, hey, the contract states that this is the close date and this is the amount of money transferred, and it's very black and white. There's no misinterpreting the black and white contract, so you're able to keep that neutral stance, or no? Is there some things that are left for interpretation?
Well, the contract, yes, is very black and white as long as it's filled out properly.
Right. So these
very
are the
important
dates.
to make sure that it's filled out. You mark who's going to be paying the costs. Sometimes where it gets a little tricky is on counteroffers where people use their own verbiage, and you have to kind of make sure everybody is in agreement with what's happening. Sometimes it'll say, for example, seller will not pay for termite. Well, that's not waiving a termite. So are we having a termite? Is the buyer going to pay for a termite? It's not getting rid of it. It's leaving it pretty open for interpretation.
Gotcha.
So that's why it's very important that you are very clear on your counteroffers of what your goal is and what you want.
Okay. So when people come to you, let's say that we find a buyer and we find a seller that are willing to exchange the property for money, right?
Yeah.
We put it up for sale and you guys want to buy it. Great. Well, we filled out the real estate paperwork. Now what? We take it to you, right?
Yes.
And we say, hey, can you open escrow?
Right.
So what are you opening when you open escrow? You have a file with paperwork? You have a bank account that you're opening? What are you doing?
Okay, so what do you mean? What am I doing or what are the buyer and seller doing?
What does the whole process look like?
Okay.
When people say, I'm in escrow, no one really knows what that means.
Okay, so when you're in escrow, it means that you have an agreed upon contract, the buyer and seller have both agreed upon. You have your real estate agents, typically. We're not talking about for sale by owners, but a real estate transaction. So what happens is typically the listing agent will open escrow with the escrow officer of their choice. That's kind of the driver of who chooses escrow. And then once we have the contract, our job is to review it, make sure everything is complete. We assign an escrow number. We request buyer information, seller information. As soon as we have the buyer's information, we contact them and we have a conversation with them on the phone.
And what does that look like?
We introduce ourselves.
Okay.
We warn them, scare them about wire fraud because that is a huge issue in our industry right now.
Yes.
What my office does, and I think most of the escrow companies in this area do, we do not send wire instructions to our clients until we're on the phone with them and talking to them and they can verify receipt of them when we send them. That's the only way to verify that there's no chance of them getting incorrect wire instructions or fraud,
Right.
slipping in somewhere.
Right.
We warn our buyers that we will never send them a request to send us money. If they receive one, it's fraud. We are
Okay.
not changing our bank. If they get new wire instructions, it's fraud. We scare them, and we have that conversation 2 or 3 times throughout the transaction because they are getting a lot of information and a lot of things thrown at them. And sometimes they get scared and they're like, oh, I've got to get this money in right away.
Right.
So we try to keep it on the forefront and not just leave it as a little verbiage on the bottom of our email.
Right. That is probably the biggest mistake that I think a buyer could make because, I mean,
100%.
if you send money to the wrong account,
It's gone.
what do we do? What's the standard procedure? We call the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
We say, hey, we're literally calling the FBI and we're saying, hey, there's been wire fraud and you guys need to get involved in this now.
Yes.
And it's,
But typically, by the time the buyers are aware that their money went to the wrong place, it is gone and it is impossible to get back.
yeah. So that is, if anybody takes anything from this podcast, it's
Be
please
afraid.
be afraid of where you're wiring money.
Yes.
Typically, you only wire money twice in a transaction, right?
You should, unless you have an increased deposit on your contract, but
Okay.
typically you are only wiring money twice, once at the beginning and once at the end.
Yeah.
And
it's
you
the same
should
bank
not have to
account.
send your money before you have your loan document signed. That's
Yeah.
my belief. I want to make sure that the numbers are correct. I
Right.
don't like when lenders get involved and they tell their buyers to get money in so we can close quicker. It doesn't make it any quicker.
Yeah.
If we don't have loan documents, we're not closing. It doesn't matter if your money's there or not.
I do feel like oftentimes there are sometimes people want to rush things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, let's just go through the process and dot our T's and cross
Right.
cross our T's and dot our I's because this is all super important and we don't
It's
want to
very
make
important.
mistakes.
And this is why you want to work with professionals that you trust, that you know are going to take care of your clients and their money.
Yeah.
You cannot get that money back if it goes to the wrong place.
And you saved a client of mine too. Crazy story. They were about to wire $1 million. They were buying a house all cash, and I guess the email that they got was one character off from your email, and they had stolen your email banner, and the phone number was their phone number. And we sniffed it out because he called me and said, "Hey, what's up? We're closing early." And I said, "No, we're not." He goes,
Yeah.
"Well, I just got an email that said we are." And I said, "No, we're not." I go, "Let me call and let me verify everything." And we got on the phone and we called the fake number.
We did.
Yeah, and that was hilarious
Yeah.
because they picked up and they're like, "Hello?" And I think you said, "You're pretending to be me."
I'm not
And-
afraid of confrontation.
Yeah, that was incredible. So
We also
crisis
sent their
averted.
information to the FBI. But
Yes.
one thing that we've seen that in the past few years is how they're getting this information, how the scammers are,
Mm-hmm.
is if you have an account with Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, AOL,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason those appear, and I don't understand how this works. I know escrow, I don't understand computers. But what we've noticed is somehow they get into your email and they create a rule. in your email so that every email you receive is being sent to an offsite email address and they're monitoring it.
Whoa.
So when when your CD is issued, they know, okay, they're going to be getting ready to send their money and now we're going to come in and send this. And the only reason we found that out is because we always email everybody on a transaction. Like if we're emailing our sellers, we're copying their agents. If we email the buyers, we're copying their agents and their lender and anybody involved on their side so they know what's being communicated to their client. And one time I got an email kickback, and it wasn't an email that I had sent to an email I sent. So I contacted my IT person, and he told me about this way that they're getting into emails. I contacted my seller, and she went into her Google, and there was a rule on her account that every email she received was being sent to somebody else.
Wow.
And so they were watching it, but they weren't deleting the email, so it got full, which is the only reason we found out about it. So if you're buying or selling, constantly check your rules on your email.
Yeah.
See if anybody has hacked into your account, because those are the easy ones to get into.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, my fiance's account got hacked recently, and funny enough, my son's Fortnite account is linked to her email, and they blocked receiving emails from Epic Games support. So when I went into the email and I'm on the phone with them, I'm trying to get the account information back because my son's got his beloved Fortnite skins, right? I mean, to be fair, there's probably $1,000 worth of in-game transactions that have gone on over the 6 or 7 years that he's played this video game, right? He gets $20 here for his birthday, and gift cards and everything, right? That's all they want. So they blocked receiving emails from the support contact. So we had to go through all that. We're still trying to get our Instagram back. So yeah, cybersecurity is very important, especially in a real estate transaction, because from a buyer's perspective or a seller's perspective, how many emails are you getting in the 30-day process?
So many. Something I've seen a lot of sellers and buyers doing recently is creating a new email for the purchase.
Only, specifically.
Specifically for
That's
the purchase.
Such a smart idea.
Purchase of street name, sale of street name at AOL, at Gmail, I don't know, whatever everybody's using these days. And that way it's not bombarded with all their other stuff and they're not missing emails. So that might be something that people look into.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. That's a hack. That's a new one.
Ooh.
Yeah. What do they call those?
Life hack?
A life hack, yeah, exactly. So after you open the file and you introduce yourself to the clients, what are the next steps for them? Basically, hey, you're going to be asked to review and fill out an opening packet?
So what we do when we send out our intro email after we've spoken with the buyer and the seller, we include a couple of forms in each package that helps us process the transaction. For the buyer, it includes their vesting form, because that's something the lender needs, their statement of information, and an e-signature form so we can send them DocuSigns throughout the transaction.
Okay.
For the seller, we send them a loan statement form that tells us if they have any loans on the property, if there's any HOAs, solar, anything we need to take care of before we can close the transaction. We ask for that up front so we can get ahead of that and start ordering those demands before it's too late.
So you said a couple things that are very important that I want to touch on. So vesting, for the people that don't know what vesting is how you would like to hold the title of your home.
Correct.
And if let's say that we're a married couple, we can either own it 100% together, or we can own it 50-50, or we can own it right of survivorship. There's how many different ways to hold the title of your home?
Well, you can hold it as joint tenants. You can hold it as community property. You can hold it as community property of right of survivorship. You can hold it 50-50, tenants in common, but that is a little funny when you're married, because I would have to quit claim off of your 50%, and you would have to quit claim off of my 50%.
Okay.
It's probably smarter, if you're concerned about ownership interests, not to get married to that person and maybe not buy a house with them. But if you do, maybe establish a trust.
Okay. So, and then the trust is directions of what to do.
Exactly.
And the trust is an entity that holds the title of the home.
Usually, if you're financing, most lenders won't finance to a trust. So it's something you have to do after you close escrow.
And you can help facilitate that?
No, but we have companies that do that.
Okay, so then there goes recommending other professionals.
Exactly. There's companies that are licensed and insured to handle those transactions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the title of the home. And then you said about like solar. Solar has been just a fun hurdle. I know you're sighing. It's been a fun hurdle. I use the word fun facetiously for us in the industry, because there's a story that they bought solar on the home, and then that company sold to another company, and then that company went bankrupt and took over another company. So it's like,
it's a disaster.
Who do you call if you're the third or fourth company that's taken over this file or this account.
If you have solar, if you have put solar on your property and you have financed it or you have a lease, make sure you keep all of your paperwork that they send you so you can give that if you decide to sell. I have one person in my office, Rebecca. She handles all the solars. She is so good at it. It is ridiculous.
I love it.
She harasses them. She follows up with them. She makes sure the buyer and sellers are taking care of everything they need to. She updates everybody. We typically have our solar paperwork facilitated within 2 weeks of opening escrow.
Yeah, because we know how important it is, and we don't want to be at the closing table.
We do not want to be at the closing
and
table.
having someone stop their moving truck or park the moving truck in front of the house because we couldn't figure out solar.
Typically now, lenders won't even move past loan approval without the solar transfer being finalized. They want to make sure that it's done. One of the recommendations I have is, as a seller, if you have solar, call them before you sell. Make sure it can be transferred, because some of them will not allow you to transfer. You have to pay it off.
Yes.
Some of them will let you transfer, but they have high transfer fees. Who's paying that?
Yeah.
These are things you need to find out so that you can negotiate them while you are negotiating your contract.
And that's a big deal when it comes to a house that's, an $800,000 house, and the seller has to pay off the $40,000 worth of solar. So they're making $40,000 less from the proceeds.
Yep.
That'll really put a hiccup in you buying your next house.
Exactly.
Could even make you not qualify. So look into everything.
It's very important to call your solar company if you have one.
Yeah. And so happy that Rebecca is the one that's kind of taking care of all that, because she's kind of dealt with all of them before.
She has, and it's better to have one person, in my opinion, who handles all of it, because there's always one point of contact instead of somebody going, well, this is the last update I got, and this is the last update. Rebecca has everything dialed in, and she is extremely organized.
And this is the way that you operate your office, just based on your experience over the years.
Yes.
Right? And you just make little fine tunes along the way and say,
anytime we make a mistake, we learn from it and we change our process.
So it never happens again.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay.
We like to learn from our mistakes. We're humans. We're going to make them. It
True.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people work nights too, so it's tough to get them to sign things in a timely manner and to explain it to them.
Right. Which is why my philosophy on escrow is hurry up and wait. Like, let's get everything done in the beginning so then we can wait, and we're not chasing people down when we're ready to close.
Yes, and I love that so much. I say we front load things.
Yeah.
I want 2/3 of the work done in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because the best thing to do is cruise to the finish line, because you're going to be worried about your contents of your home and scheduling movers and utilities and this and that. So the first half of the escrow, we should do all the paperwork.
Absolutely.
And the second half, you should worry about packing your things
Yes.
and actually moving. You're not going to be available. So, okay. And what's cool about your office too is, if anytime anybody has a question, or if they're like, you know what, I don't really trust the online stuff, like, I'd like to come in and speak with someone.
Yeah.
You welcome them in with open arms and say,
and we
perfect.
offer that before we offer DocuSign, but some people are busy. They work normal, business hours like we do, but we also have a slew of notaries that we can call on at any time that will go out and meet our buyers and sellers at any time, day or night, if that's what they need.
Right. So, and a notary would be someone that goes and gets a physical signature, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often in a typical escrow process do you need physical signatures, and who do you need them from?
We need them from a seller on every transaction.
Okay. And that's to notarize the deed, right?
To notarize the deed, and we require their wire instructions to be notarized now.
Okay. And then for the buyer?
For the buyer, if they're financing.
They're financing.
They have to sign the loan documents.
Okay. So the notary shows up and they verify their ID, who they say they are.
Exactly.
And what happens when their ID says their last name, and then they go, oh yeah, well, I got married recently, so I've changed my last name.
Oh, one of the things we ask for in the beginning of the transaction is a copy of their ID to make sure it matches. So
Just
we have
to verify.
that right in the beginning, so that does not happen.
So your office and your role is worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
Because you're 10 steps ahead of any problem that could occur.
We try.
On day one.
Yes.
So I guess if there's anything that we can convey to the listeners is, like, you need to really work with someone that is competent and understands everything.
And
because not everybody's equal, right?
It's true. I think most of the escrow companies in our area are. I have a huge respect for everybody who works out here.
Yeah.
We had a great escrow association for many years that most of us were part of. I have relationships with almost every escrow officer in this area. So I think if you're doing business in Santa Clarita, you're okay.
Yeah.
It's when you venture out, you could run into some hiccups. You have the companies that offer a flat rate escrow fee, and I've heard horror stories from
Yeah.
those. One of the things that we do as well is, as soon as the deposit has been received and the agent opening packages have gone out, I review the file and I send an email out to the agents letting them know every single thing I am going to need on that file before we can close escrow. And then once a week I send the same email removing things that I've received so everybody knows at all times what I need.
Yeah. And that's like, I guess for you it's standard practice, but for other companies that are the flat rate, or
Well,
we've
they're
even
not hiring people who have the knowledge if they're not you have to make money to have people
to hire good
to
people.
hire good people.
That's right. Yeah. And you can't really pay someone to care. They kind of have to care on their
You
own.
cannot pay somebody to care.
Right?
Yeah.
So finding good staff is super important.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why we love your office is
Aw, thank
everybody
you.
there is so great.
I have a great team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the things that buyers or sellers could do that are no-nos, let's say. So
Okay.
I know that buying a car while you're in escrow is a big
Don't
no-no.
buy anything when you're in escrow.
Well, let's
and if
clarify.
you're going to buy something, ask your lender.
Yeah.
Call your lender.
Let's clarify not buying anything.
Yeah.
So regular bills and regular groceries and pay your current mortgage
Yeah.
and pay your
Keep
car
your
payment.
bills current.
Right. But aside from that, the no-nos are don't open up a new line of credit at Home Depot because you're going to buy fridges and stuff. Kind of wait on that.
Yeah.
Don't go buy a new truck for your new house, which I had a client do, which was
We've
crazy.
all had a client do that.
And he goes, look at my new truck. I'm going to put it in my new garage. And I was like, you're not going to have a garage to put this truck in because now you won't qualify.
We've definitely had to have people pay off trucks they had just purchased
Yeah.
in order to close escrow.
If they want the house, right?
Well, if
Or
they don't
what's-
want to lose their deposit too, because at that point they've usually released contingencies.
Yeah, that's true. So that would be a no-no. What else? Verify that you're talking to the correct person. If you're worried about the wire information, call the office.
Yeah. For sellers, it's don't transfer ownership. Don't put your property into a trust when you're in escrow. Don't take somebody off.
Yeah.
Add somebody.
Notify your wife or husband if you're planning on selling your home, right? Because we've gotten to a part where we open escrow and we get kind of halfway through and then we realize, oh, husband and wife aren't getting along, so the wife's not willing to sign this paperwork, so we can't really do this unless
Yes.
two parties are in agreement.
California, you cannot buy a home without your spouse being involved, whether they go on title with you or
Yeah.
whether they relinquish their interest with a quitclaim deed.
Yeah.
You have, even if you're legally separated, if you are divorced, that is the only way you can do it. If you are married, even if your wife lives in a different country, you cannot buy the house without their knowledge.
So that's education.
So don't try that.
Yeah. And then you've actually closed escrows while people are in different countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is crazy to me because people will have an African safari planned, and then
Always.
they'll say, "By the way, we're going to sell our rental property,
Or we're
while
buying."
we're buying when we're on this cruise."
Yeah.
and it's like, "Hey, we're in the Mediterranean, and I didn't buy the internet package on my cruise ship." It's like, well, we need a physical.
Cruise is harder than being in a different country. If you're in a different country and you're selling, you can schedule an appointment with the American consulate and get a notary done there. But the appointments do usually run 3 to 4 weeks out, so it's something
wow.
you need to take care of immediately. Another way, if you know you're going to be out of the country and you're selling, you could talk to your escrow person and title person and see if you could use a power of attorney for somebody you trust.
Oh, okay.
Who would sign on your behalf.
Okay.
Those we don't really love using
Yeah.
because if we can avoid it, we want to avoid it, but it is an option.
Okay.
Purchasing, if you're out of the country, that's trickier if you're buying with a loan because it is hard to do loan documents at an American consulate. because,
Interesting. Because they don't like the financial aspect of it, right?
I don't know what it is they don't like, but they basically bind the documents. So it's hard to record a deed of trust that's bound.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll bind the note to the deed of trust, and it's hard to detach and get the note to the lender. So it does create some problems. Try to buy when you're going to stay in the States or not
country.
vacationing. We know it
Yeah.
doesn't always work, but
It can be done.
It
but
can be done.
You're really throwing a wrench in
yeah,
things.
and you're going to be delayed because there's no overnight shipping to other countries.
That's true. Yeah.
You're taking at least 3 to 4 days, and that's if there's no storms, no problems.
So, in a typical real estate transaction, what can a buyer and seller expect to pay as far as escrow fees?
So escrow fees are usually a base escrow fee with $1 per thousand added on top of that.
Oh, so the more expensive the house, the more expensive the escrow.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then if there are other parts of the transaction, if there's a loan, there's going to be a loan tie-in fee. If there's HOA, there's going to be HOA processing fee. If there's solar, there's going to be solar processing fees. So those are all in addition to your base escrow fee.
Okay, and none of those are your fees per se. They're like, because you have an HOA, they're going to charge you.
No, we're collecting them to work with the HOA.
Oh, okay.
We're collecting it to work with the solar company.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's how we can have really good people working on these things and getting them done on time.
So typically, when we come to you and we open escrow with a buyer and seller, it's about a 30-day process. And it's my job to make sure that my clients adhere to the timelines that are set in that contract.
Right.
What can cause delays in a real estate transaction? There's probably a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. We'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
If your seller doesn't respond to us and pay for their HOA documents in a timely manner, that can delay because the buyer gives the buyer more time to remove their contingencies because
Okay.
it's going to take longer to get them the reports they need to review. If the preliminary title report takes a while, so if you're dealing with original owners of a property, I recommend on any transaction opening a pre-escrow, getting a preliminary title report
Yes.
to review to make sure that title is clear and there are no issues that need to be resolved. Sometimes title issues can take a lot longer than 30 days to resolve.
Right. And we've came into a couple issues with title too. Like if, even on the house that I sold my parents, right? Someone had put a lien on the house for child support. And I
Yes.
went to my dad and I was a little nervous. And I was like, Dad, who is this lady that's asking for child support? And he goes, I don't know her. And we came to you and we say, okay, we don't know this person. And somehow you guys got it cleared. So
Well, because people have the same name.
Yeah.
A lot of people have common names. And so if there is a lien or a judgment against that person, the title company is going to err on the side of caution, show it on the report.
Okay.
And what will remove that is a completed statement of information, which shows your social security number, your addresses that you've lived in, and that helps title verify, okay, these socials don't match, we're going to remove it.
okay. So opening a pre-escrow and getting the full preliminary title
Yes.
report taken care of ahead of time. Again, just going back to getting as much done as you can in a timely
Exactly.
manner so you're not waiting for a problem to arise.
Right.
You're trying to get in front of every problem.
Yes.
Okay. What are some
you're
other mistakes?
Dealing with successor trustees, making sure you have a full copy of the trust before you list the property.
Okay.
A lot of times people think that they're the successor trustees and you get the trust and they're not. And you actually have a listing agreement now that it is null and void because that person does not have the authority to sign on behalf of the trust.
So let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
So if you are a successor trustee, that would mean that your parents passed away and they left you a property that was held in a trust.
Not necessarily left you a property, but if they left you as the successor trustee, you're the person who is carrying out their wishes in terms of the trust.
Okay.
So it's your job to make sure everything is followed the way they wanted it done.
Okay, so directions basically.
Exactly.
So hey,
You
guys
could be the beneficiary as well.
Okay, so successor trustee and beneficiary likely the same but not always the case.
Correct.
Okay. So then you figure out, okay, well, my parents passed away and we're in charge of the properties, and the trust that was written in 1994 when I was born, we have to go find that actual document and see how they wanted the proceeds
Exactly.
to be divvied up and who actually has authority to sign on behalf of the
Right.
trust.
Yes.
Okay. And people oftentimes think that they have the authority because their parents said they took care of it,
Yeah.
but maybe they didn't do it the correct way.
Right. There's a lot of, we've seen a lot come up through escrow where, sometimes families go through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes they change successor trustees and they change beneficiaries. And it's really important to have those conversations with your clients and make sure they have all the correct documents. I do not recommend waiting until you're in escrow and asking your escrow officer to request them.
Right.
Unless you open up a pre-escrow and then you can introduce them and then we can ask for it.
Okay. So again, just getting out ahead of any problem that
Exactly.
may arise.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got to follow the timeline set forth in the contract. You got to make sure that you actually are the legal owner and have the signing authority
Exactly.
on the property. What else can happen? What have you seen?
We have seen old deeds of trust. Right now I have a $20,000 deed of trust on title from 1974 that was never reconveyed.
Okay.
So that's a problem.
Okay.
So we now are trying to track down the bank, all the banks that have disappeared since the original one and have taken over. and it's a successor trustee, so this person has no records of it because it was his parents' property. So these are things that can be resolved before escrow if you have a pre-escrow.
Okay, so basically, there's a bank that lent money on the purchase of a home that has yet to be paid back in full,
No, they've
or they've been paid back in full.
100% they have been paid in full. They have not been making mortgage payments. They would have they would have foreclosed on it. But
Okay.
it's a $20,000 loan from 1974.
And so the bank just didn't give them the full reconveyance?
Yes, a lot of times
Paperwork?
what used to happen is the banks would mail you the reconveyance with very little instructions on what to do with it instead of filing the reconveyance themselves.
Okay.
So now if you look at a payoff statement, you always have a reconveyance fee. And that's the fee that the company is charging you to record the reconveyance.
Gotcha.
They didn't always do that. So a lot of times people find it in old binders and we're still able to record them if they have the original.
Oh, cool.
But you have to be really organized.
Yeah, which a lot of people aren't.
No, they're not.
I mean, I'm admittedly not super organized. I have paperwork, and everything else is on my computer or on my
Yeah.
phone. But to have a binder or a portfolio of everything, I bet you love those clients, the sellers
The ones
that
that
are
come
just,
in with stacks of paper, I love it.
They're just
We found
meticulous.
so much good stuff in there.
oh man,
Yeah.
people that have like, oh, do you need my washer and dryer warranty too? You're
They
like,
don't
no,
come to us with
you
that.
can leave that behind for the new buyer. I'm sure they would like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Has there been, obviously there's been escrows that are unable to close
Yeah.
for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So walk me through kind of what happens there. Do you guys get paid on files that
No.
don't follow through?
No, we
So
don't
you
charge
could do-
cancellation fees.
You could do 29 days of work, and on the 30th day, the wife or husband says, you know what, we're moving to a different state. We're canceling all this, or we're going to stay put, or I don't care about my $20,000 deposit. Life changes, right?
That is so rare that somebody
rare.
gets to the end of a transaction and cancels.
Yeah.
In my 20 plus years, I've had it happen once, and I did charge the full escrow fee, buyer and seller, to the buyer because we funded their loan, and before we could record that day, he canceled the escrow. And we found out later he wanted to buy a different house.
Oh, so that's the problem.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
We've done our job at that point. We've
Yeah.
done it all the way up until the end. So he had already brought in his closing funds, and it's kind of a funny story. So we issued our cancellation instructions, and in our cancellation instructions it said that X amount of the deposit is going to the seller.
Uh-huh.
Escrow is being paid their escrow fee, and the remaining balance from his down payment is going back to him.
Okay.
He signed it.
Okay.
We called him when we were ready to disperse the funds, and when he got his check, he saw that it was not the full amount he had brought into escrow.
Right.
Questioned me, and so I brought his cancellation instructions out and showed him what he had signed.
Yeah.
He said he didn't read them, and I said, well,
Nice.
I'm very sorry, but you canceled escrow after we had done our job, so we are going to be paid for this transaction.
Yeah.
And this is your money. And he proceeded to pick up the instructions, put them in his mouth.
He ate them.
And ate them.
You told me this
yeah,
story.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's crazy.
And I told him it was just a copy, that I had the original still in my file. That
Yeah.
was before we had, it was when we had paper files, before
my
everything was
gosh.
electronic.
That guy must have been real bent out of shape.
He was not happy. He came to visit us a lot. Yeah. It was
So
fun.
those are probably one of the 3 negative reviews you guys have. They took my money and they're horrible.
Reviews
this
are
and
funny.
that.
People can write whatever they want, and
Yeah.
it is what it is.
I have a friend that has a business in town. I won't say too much, but there was a public-ish figure, someone who's a predominant business figure, took their child to this business and claimed that the cleaning products that they were using was giving her an autoimmune reaction or some sort of cancer, and to never take your kids to this business because of the cleaning products that they use to clean their establishment. And it was a 1-star review, and I just think that looks so bad on the person leaving the review, because you're the 1-star review in a comment section littered with 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
And it's like, do people
That's
just
a hard
have
thing to prove, too.
off days? Yeah, how are you supposed to prove that you got exposure to toxic chemicals when
At
they sell
what
these
spot?
cleaning products,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know.
Yeah, but negative reviews are pretty funny.
Yeah. My grandma always used to say, whatever people say about you says a lot more about them than it does about you.
That's
and
true.
I've always taken
Yeah.
that to heart.
Yeah, and you do have a great reputation in town, so
I
it's
try. I really care.
yeah.
And we make mistakes. Everybody does, but we own up to them, and we do everything possible to fix them if it comes up.
Yeah. So there's a mistake that we had one time on a transaction, was the amount of money that they distributed to the client at the end, they actually distributed them more money.
That was not my file.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, just want to make that clear. You came to me for help on that one, but that was
did.
not my escrow.
And how does that happen if do you guys just have like a I thought you opened a separate bank account for each file.
Absolutely not.
No.
We have a trust account. Every
Okay.
escrow company has a trust account, and it's a non-interest bearing account. So
Okay.
your money is in there and it's safe.
Okay.
But what happens is you are balancing out a file, and if you input incorrect numbers into that computer system, you will make a mistake.
Okay. And so then they didn't catch that until months later when they said, wait a minute, we sent you too much money on accident. And good thing my client was a very honest person and said, oh, okay, I get it. Here's your $5,000 back that I wasn't supposed to have. But that was a tough conversation because they're like, well, they sent it to me. And I was like,
Yeah,
but
but there
it
is
wasn't yours.
Yeah, and
right?
every escrow company has general provisions that the buyers and sellers sign, and that's an agreement between the buyer and the seller and the escrow company. And
So
there
kind
is
of-
a clause in the general provisions typically that will state if you are issued too much money, you have to give it back. Like
'Cause it's not
you don't
yours.
get to earn money
Yeah.
from a mistake.
That's
we
true.
have to do the right thing still.
Yeah.
You shouldn't benefit from a mistake, in my opinion.
True.
Especially one that doesn't hurt somebody.
Yeah. Interesting. So is there something that buyers and sellers can do to make your life easier? Like, let's say that they get off of work every day at 3. They just tell you that, hey, I'm not really available until after 3 o'clock. So you're not sending them 1,000 emails wondering why they're not getting back to them?
Absolutely, but we wouldn't send them 1,000 emails between 8 and 3. If we really needed somebody, we would pick up the phone and call them.
Okay.
But yes, if there's something that's going to work better for your life, please just let us know. If you want one person contacting you instead of being contacted by different people throughout the process, let us know. We can always accommodate that.
Yeah.
We want to make it easy for you. You've got a lot going on. You've got to pack.
Yeah.
You got to move. You got
Gotta
to fill
deal with
out
realtors.
so much paperwork. Whatever we can do to alleviate some of that stress, if it's a simple change in process, we're happy to do it.
Okay. And you being in the position that you are, managing an escrow office, would you use an escrow company if you bought and sold a house, or would you do all the paperwork all by yourself?
Well, I would have to, because I wouldn't be able to be a neutral third party for myself.
Oh, okay. That's the caveat. It's kind of like...
Because I would be working for my own benefit,
That's right.
not for the buyer if I was selling or the seller if I was buying. So I would definitely, when I bought my house, I used Mercedes.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So, and you were probably a dream client for her. Or maybe you were a nightmare
I was
client.
probably a nightmare. I was like, is this done? Is this done?
Yeah.
Is this done? I was awful. Sorry, Merce.
Yeah.
Love
That's
you.
true, yeah. That's why my fiance never cooks for me. Because I walk in there and I go, these tomatoes, they're not the same size. They're not going to cook at the same rate. Like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm trying to do something nice for you. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Well, I would have cut you.
Yeah. Do people give you gifts after you close a file?
Sometimes.
Isn't
Not
it
often.
weird when people bring you gifts and you're like, I just did my job, but thanks for the gift card to Cheesecake Factory?
You know what? It is nice. It's very rare, and I don't expect it, obviously. But typically, I think when I've had a few files that were really tough getting through, that the clients realized how hard we worked, and they would bring us something nice. Like,
Aw.
letters, cards are great. I love a thank you card.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need gifts. We really do enjoy what we do, and yeah.
And you guys are typically available every day from like 9 to 5 or 9 to 6?
9 to 5.
9 to 5?
Everybody has my cell phone number. It's on my business card, though, so you can reach me after hours if needed. But let's save it for, like, real emergencies.
Yeah. And you've been such a pivotal role in my success, especially early on in my career when I would come to you and I would be like, okay, like, I feel like I've done everything. Like, what's next? Like, the last 3 days of escrow is always the most stressful for me because the file's out of my hands at that point.
Yeah.
I've done everything, and now I'm relying on 3 different people to get it across the finish line.
Yeah.
So when my clients call me and they go, okay, so what's up with this? What's up with that? What's happening? Then I go, I got to make a phone call because the file's out of my hands.
Well,
So
you
what do you
should-
do
yeah.
in the last 3 days
So
of
the last
a
3
file?
days is typically the buyer you're getting ready to fund the buyer's loan, right?
Okay.
So the loan funds, and then the next day it records.
Okay.
And as long as everything goes smoothly, it will close,
Yes.
right? There are problems sometimes with recordings.
Yes.
Sometimes they do get pulled for very silly reasons. Sometimes for big reasons. Sometimes the notary forgot to stamp the deed of trust. That is very rare in
Okay.
my office. We check those things.
Yeah. Mine got kicked back recently for penmanship.
Yep.
They didn't like the way that the buyer wrote their first name, and they said, this A looks like a B, so we don't want to take this. But the title company stepped in and said, if it's a penmanship error, we'll take the liability, close the file, get them in. There's a moving truck outside.
Yes.
So,
There are certain recorders that are pickier than others. And it really, in my opinion, started happening after COVID. Once
Okay.
things started recording electronically, it was a lot harder to get them through. They used to have a recording service, go to the recorder's office and stand in line and record all the documents in person.
yeah.
Now it's done electronically, so if they pull one, it's hard to, you cannot get it recorded, whereas before you used to be able to fix it, go to the back of the line, and you just get a late confirmation.
Okay.
So-
So the last 3 days is verifying that the buyer's loan actually
Get the
goes
loan
from the bank
funded.
to your escrow account?
No, the lender funds the loan to the title company,
Okay.
because the title company makes the payoffs.
Okay.
And then they send us the proceeds. So they handle the recording. Once the recording is confirmed, they issue any payoffs,
Okay.
and then they send the money to us. And
Okay.
then we disperse to buyer, seller, agents.
So it's the title
Insurance.
company that disperses you the funds, and then you cut the final checks for everybody?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And then about how many escrows do you do, I guess, last year? Do you know how many escrows your office handled last year?
I handled over 450 transactions last year.
Okay. And in Santa Clarita Valley, I think the numbers were 1,200 houses were bought and sold.
Oh, cool.
So you handled quite a few
I did.
files there. So if someone has questions, it's just go to you for the answers because you've done this before. You've done it.
Yeah.
You did it 400 times last year alone, and
Not
often,
alone. I have a fantastic team.
Right. You've done it over 400 times last year.
Yeah.
And most people buy and sell one or two houses in their
Right.
lifetime. So there's a lot of people that jump in and say, well, I didn't know that this was like this, or why is this happening? It's like, well, this is the way we do things.
Right.
Things
And-
change.
Yeah,
Trust
and
us.
if you're moving from a different state, it's going to be very different because we are one of the only areas that has title and escrow in the way we handle things. LA County is one of the only counties that does not record the same day it funds, so there's always a day in
Correct.
between.
Yeah.
We like to do things really difficult out here in LA County.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
So other than the guy eating the cancellation in front of you, is there any other fun, cool, crazy stories about escrow? Anything notable to share?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just difficult files that take much longer to close than they should.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think that the husband and wife one where the husband tried to sell the house without the wife knowing. I
Yeah,
thought that was
that's a problem.
was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, I think, opening pre-escrows is your key to having a smooth transaction because you can verify, you can take care of any issues that pop up.
yeah, this is our sandbox, our playground.
Right.
We know what we're doing.
Yes,
So if you have questions, come to us, and we'll take care of you.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, right?
absolutely.
Because we don't get paid unless there's a successful outcome of the process.
Right.
Right. So
Not only that, but you would just want to create a safe space for people. You don't want them to leave the transaction feeling like horrible about it. You want them so excited to move into their new home. And, I think something that people forget a lot of is this is most people's biggest investment. If for a seller, it's sometimes where their kids took their first steps.
yeah,
It's where they had all their babies and, their kids grew up and went to college and now they're downsizing. That's emotional.
it's such a big part of people's lives.
It is.
Yeah.
Homes are very important and, not doing your job properly can really affect the way they feel about moving into a new home or moving out of their old home. So
Yeah.
I think it's just really important to do our best every single day.
Yeah. Well, you certainly do that.
I try.
We're here for it. So thank you. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to go over all this with me. I hope that this shed some light on the escrow industry for people so they
too.
know what to do, what not to do. And now they're hopefully comfortable that, we can handle it. No
Yeah.
matter what it is, don't be freaked out. We've seen it before. We'll take care of it.
Every problem has a resolution.
Yeah. And we're going to do 2/3 of the work in the first 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
I know it's going to seem like a lot and everyone's going to ask you for everything, but fill out all the paperwork, ask questions on the paperwork, understand it, and we'll take care of the rest.
Yes.
And we'll get you from A to B.
Yes.
So you're the best. Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you, Chris.